Israel is celebrating 25 years of diplomatic relations with Albania, a NATO member and Muslim-majority country. One of the most significant factors in the closeness of ties is Albania's historic role in saving countless Jews from the Nazis during World War II. To mark the occasion, Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Reuven Rivlin in Jerusalem. And now we have the distinct pleasure of having him here in our studio. Prime Minister Edi Rama, good evening. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Well, let's begin by recapping your meeting with the Prime Minister Netanyahu today. We know that you discussed bilateral agreements between the countries, whether it's on trade or water and other deals. Can you fill us in, talk us through the deals between the two countries that are expected, specifically on the issue of security?
I'm very honored to be here in Israel as Prime Minister of Albania, because, as you already mentioned, we have a very proud history of salvation of Jews, and no one Jew was released to the Germans, and a big role in this miracle was played by Muslim families. And at the same time, in these 25 years, we have reconnected and strengthened our relation, which was broken unnaturally by the communist dictatorship for 50 years. We discussed with the Prime Minister Netanyahu about, of course, terrorism and the common threats that our world of democracy and human rights and certain well-defined values is facing. And we shared the common understanding that Albania can play a very important role in this fight, not least because we are part of a region where there is a multi-religious society, and where, of course, there is a lot of work to be done in terms of prevention and intelligence. At the same time, we, of course, discussed about how to strengthen the economic cooperation and how to make the best out of the very clear Prime Minister's will to help Albania and to support our efforts in the way of developing our country. And finally, very happily, we signed the declaration of friendship among the two countries.
Well, I do want to expand on your point that you just made about fighting terrorism. This is, of course, a growing concern across Europe now. In neighboring Macedonia, there is already fear of an Islamist power growing. How big a concern is this within Macedonia, within Albania, excuse me?
Frankly speaking, I think we are so far in a very good place, and regionally we are in the best place we have ever been, because there is dialogue and cooperation among all countries and states as never before. But in the same time, in Albania we have the specific situation which Pope Francis during his visit named religious fraternity among Muslims and Christians, Catholics, Orthodox, and different other communities. And in the same time, we very much fear that we have, if we don't do the right work to strengthen and promote this tradition, we are vulnerable, and we are vulnerable in all over the region. So the fight against terrorism is not simply counter attacking by all means, but also winning the hearts and minds of people, and fighting poverty, and fighting social marginalization. But concretely, with our partners, we can and we are engaged in doing much more work of intelligence and information exchange.
And on the issue of vulnerability, of course, this is also related to fears within Europe. The issue of migration that's hit Europe in several places this past year. Macedonia dealt with it in a very, very difficult way. How is Albania coping with the crisis?
We're not touched by it because we are not part of the route which goes from Turkey to Greece, Macedonia, Serbia, and up in Northern Europe. But we are prepared to deal with it, and we are a country that know what it is to deal with fluxes and with migrations that are provoked by wars and by bloody conflicts, because we had to host 500,000 refugees that were escaping Kosovo under the pressure of the ethnic cleansing machine of then dictator in Belgrade. So we are ready to help, and we are committed to be solidarian as it is in our best tradition.
And over the past few recent years on the issue of preparedness, in 2009, of course, Albania joined NATO. How does this change the country's position, especially now with the increasing conflict within the Middle East? NATO is becoming a more and more crucial and powerful player and factor.
Being part of NATO for us was a dream becoming true. And it's not simply about being part of a military alliance, but it's being part of a club of countries that are together because of very clear values and principles that have to be defended. And at the same time, being part of NATO, we have been not only taking advantages from it, but also contributing in it. So we are very active in all missions of peacekeeping, and will continue to do so. And of course, as a NATO member country, we are also under threat from terrorism and from violent extremism, but it is what it is, and we take our share of responsibility.
And just to close, we opened with history, looking back at that moment when Albania was refuge to Jews fleeing the Nazis. Looking to the future now, where do you see the relations between Israel and Albania going?
I would like to see much more happening. I was just a few minutes ago saluting President Perez in his fantastic Center for Peace, where we talked about the future more than the past, and where we had the great opportunity to share our opinions and emotions in front of an Albanian Jewish community living here after having passed an important part of life under dictatorship in Albania. And I strongly believe that we can do more, but first of all, I'm very, very committed to learn as much as possible from Israel and from your great experience in many fields. And I think Israel is a great example of the fact that countries do not blossom on what they have, but on what they know.
Well, certainly sounds like a hopeful visit and something we need more of here. Prime Minister Edi Rama, welcome again to Israel, and thank you for joining us on the news today.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. It was a pleasure.